we are at war. People talk about World War III. We've been at war for a long time.
So the collective is a very dangerous thing.
It is our responsibility over planetary affairs.
We need to move like the Chinese, bro.
We were in time and space rules.
Ancient psychology and adoration of God, they would consume their God.
Right? They're not trying to give you the basis of what makes you who you are.
There's no excuse for us to still have the quote-unquote proverbial street.
We get indoctrinated with everyone else's ancestors but our own.
You don't create nothing new if it ain't broken.
We don't actually want to work for God. We want God to work for us.
It's 19 keys. 19 keys.
I appreciate my pops for teaching me how to be a guy.
From a boy to a man, and ultimately back into the natural state of being into a God.
As guys, we're supposed to always move with that higher self. I have to be able to execute it. Having knowledge is not power. The execution of knowledge is power. Knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. Because the only real knowledge you can get is knowledge of self.
This is the highest level. The highest level is ownership. The highest level is power. The highest level is sovereignty. The highest level is higher consciousness. The highest level is when we own our own culture.
Excellence at a very high level. Not eye level. A high like that.
It's time for a high level conversation.
We're here for another high level conversation. 19 keys and this is a high level conversation. Tap in with the God.
Peace, family. It's 19 Keys with another high-level conversations. Today, we're brought to have a very powerful conversing with someone who I've been actually wanting to have on this show since the beginning of it. You know, throughout the world, throughout ages, I believe that there are certain masters of the mystics, if you will. People who can see and people who can do things and people who know things that the average mind not only doesn't want to know, either has the inability to or doesn't want to know. Because sight comes with responsibility, right? Ability comes with accountability to do something with what you know and what you have. And sometimes that's the sharing of that gift that you have. And the sharing is the work within itself. Because each one of us has our own duty of what we're supposed to do with what we're supplied with, right? You know, my goal with this platform is to give even more platform for those who should be known, and not known from an egoistic, praiseworthy standpoint, but from a value standpoint, because we are at war. People talk about World War III. We've been at war for a long time, and there's been way more wars than three. This war is a war that will never end, right? Even when the war is won, a new war begins, and that's the maintaining of that victory, the maintaining of that state, right? The ideas of freedom, justice, equality, equanimity, equity, whatever you want to go to, all require war in order to maintain, right? To see the unseen is to teach the world beyond their senses. Senses make man ignorant because he relies on them to learn things that his senses cannot teach him. And the man can be manipulated through his senses. When we speak word, we're not speaking from root. The root comes from the number, and the number comes from the frequency. And so our intuition, our senses, our intuitive understanding of things is the true language of reality before we condense it down to other forms, right? Now, the good brother Rashid is somebody that has been an introducer of knowledge to many who once knew nothing about Qabalah, mysticism, the dark arts, if you will, design, juxtaposition. He is a lecturer, he is a teacher, he is an educator, he is a scholar in his own masterful right. He is a person that has led the leaders, influenced the influencers. You know, he helps those with the protocols of design, to understand the symbols of reality, to use them, because symbols are a language within themselves. And one thing that I've always admired about the brother is his ability to give instant praise. I see the brother and he say legend, right? And when he does that, it's almost like he's evoking a destiny for you to fulfill. Whether you feel you are a legend or not, he's giving you a mission and he's evoking purpose around you. And if you don't have somebody that can give you that feeling and evoke that purpose, then perhaps you need to increase the circles in your circle, right? You need to increase the sacred geometry around you so that people can activate that within, that you may not even be able to see, but certain words unlock. So without further ado, I'm about to have a very powerful conversation with one of the keys, right, of the world, of our society, the good brother 11 Rashid, otherwise known as AA Rashid. How you feeling today?
Peace and love. Peace and love. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Man, thank you for being here.
Yes, sir.
So I want to open up talking about, you know, magi, magic, imagination, right? This word is intertwined, specifically magi is intertwined into creation so heavily, right? Image, when we see something, right? When we say I imagine, it starts with either the ego or the I, right? And then we talk about imagination, right? Then we talk about magic itself. Then we talk about magicians, right? How is it that, you know, this word, or why is it, I guess is the better, why is it that certain words or this particular word of the I-M-A-G-I or the magi, you know, is so powerful in its language context that it holds so much meaning? And I ask that because I believe we are deep into the age of the magi, deep into the age of imagination, where nothing stays in the mind anymore, right? It is heavily condensed and then brought out into instantly a new dimension. Thought that you used to have to go through, you know, pressure in order to get brought out can be brought out in a couple clicks of some buttons, right? So where are we at with this idea of, number one, if we can start off, what is magic and what is magi to you?
Thank you for your question. Question is a wonderful one. I just want to preface before we answer it.
Yes, sir.
That the word magic is not an ancient word, and that the word magic is a word which was recently added post-religion to, in a sense, explain away the ignorance of our original religions encompassed us participating in behaviors that would be reminiscent of magic, that would be reminiscent of sorcery. Religion, in particular for the African American, disassociated us from that that ability to coalesce our minds with the unfolding creative processes of the universe. So what we term magic are those, it has a negative connotation now, and it's associated with the term image because images are associated with magic because they were both maligned and we were instructed not to, and even persecuted and killed and executed if we were found doing anything reminiscent of any of our ancient spiritual practices. So we see all throughout the religious narratives, there's always this this command that thou shalt not create graven images. And if you look at our culture, our ancient culture was all about making images, imagination. We have in our culture a utility of mind where we did not have this free for all thinking. We always had some place to put our thoughts. and we knew how to explain away ignorance and to embrace the reality of the infinite by placing very propitious parameters, associating them with terms and words that some were open for the layman or those, and if you're in a true civilization or a true culture, you know that you oftentimes get initiated into your culture because your culture has a reward system inclusive in it, and it's there to enable the participant on how to survive, right? So many of our cultures, they instructed us and I want to digress and like advance directly to what we, I'm gathering what we're speaking of, and I'm very interested and intrigued at how many instances in modern religion the participant is told not to do everything that we used to do in Africa to establish what it is that we call our culture. So, including, and this is another interesting thing, that not in the same breath that the religions tell us not to do it, they do the exact same thing in other versions or other modalities to tap into the unbroken story that you don't create nothing new if it ain't broken. So we have a very interesting motif that is full of sorcery and full of magic, and it's in the form of the crucifixion of a man named Jesus Christ. That is a symbolic reference to an act of sorcery whereby which one goes and makes a oratory request to deity, and upon the request, the participant goes and sacrifices a lamb, a goat, and cut into the side of the animal and go and examine the animal's liver and or intestines to find a truism or to confirm a yes or no answer from the deity of question. Okay? So through cultural morphology, that lamb became a man. So Mary had a little lamb. And then when we go look at what is this spear of destiny that they said that the Germans were looking for in World War II, they were looking for the instrument of sorcery. This is where the utility of things become the representation of deity. So now the spear of destiny, which was used to cut the side of the Christ figure, and to do what? And the advancement of examining his liver to see if it had propitious signs or light or dark mark. The light mark means yes in the question, and the dark mark means no. Over time and through cultural morphology, our people got associated with the black mark in the liver of the examination. If anyone wants to explore this phenomena, it's called extispicy. You can spell it XTEXTI and then the word spicy, SPICY, and you'll find several. And this stuff they don't teach you in school because to do so, it would almost undermine the purpose and the merit of what religion is all about. You see? And they wouldn't want you to know that ancient religion is predicated on what we would term divinity. So an act of divinity is whereby which one wants to ask, is this a good day to do an interview or a bad day? And then we would do a divination reading. So, you see that with sometimes people will have a crystal and they'll do the thing, the pendulum, and it'll be over a glass of water, and they'll ask the water as though the water is a receptor. The water acts now as a spiritual device, right? And then so does the crystal. The crystal now is operating the edicts and the truth within the water. You see? So now, over time, another key in the extispacy rites were and still are existing. The West Africans participated in it, Brazilians do it, Cubans do it, and there was a time where the Romans participated in doing so, and this is how it got to Christianity. Now, do you remember the film The Gladiator with Russell Crowe?
Hell yeah.
In that film, there's something very indicative that the filmmakers trying to keep it as real as possible with the time period. They were capturing Carthaginian religion. And in Carthaginian religious practices, and I know you all remember going to grandma's house when you were young, and grandma used to, if she had it, she used to have the salt and pepper things with it would be the black man and the black woman, right?
Yeah.
And they were like effigies of, I guess you would say, Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben's and stuff like that, right? Well, if you go look at that film with The Gladiator with Russell Crowe, there's a part where he's praying and he has two effigies. One is male and one is female, right? And he places them in front of the altar and then prays to them. And those were the original effigies used by humans to exalt not only themselves in the field of time, meaning they would put the male and the female genders on the porch of time and act as though that they're pillars on the porch, and then walk through them into the realm of destiny. So you require for anything to occur magically, you need polar opposites. You need gender opposites. You need to find gender in anything that you want to do as well. You have to find it, and you have to place them in their propitious areas, and then allow the magnetism to bring you to the fulcrum or the focus. So what we have in the form of religion is we have vestiges of all of these tools that have been suppressed and placed into other forms, so as to, and this is one of my opinions, is that the the three major religions are actually very modern. They don't have any ancient import, and that the majority of the proof that I know that they're modern is that there's so many clear indicators that the mistranslation was so rife and so beneficial to slave owners that all three religions unequivocally all accept the fact that people of color are cursed. See? And those are religions that were all utilized to, in fact, create the environment, the very hostile environment that still exists today, to justify the treatment, the maltreatment of people of color. So all religions have these elaborate modalities and methods in which to try to explain why we are cursed. You see? And when I go into and this is one of the things that I love to do, I don't like to debate with religious people. It's almost impossible. You see, they are very, for all intent and purpose, I understand the need for belief, right? And it's almost naive to try to switch people's belief, because it might be a thing for them.
Does belief constitute reality in your opinion?
You can, off your belief, do something real in the real field of time. So yes, it is an anchor for belief. So to give a positive view of that, I have, God bless her, my aunt passed away, devout Christian. And my aunt never needed a dime, never needed nothing. And houses, Cadillacs, everything. My auntie was good, traveled to and fro when she went. And when you ask her, what's your secret? Her secret is Christ.
Mm.
But this is my same auntie that when I was destitute and in need of help and light in my darkness, she would extend the light that she had within her that she said comes from Christ to me, a non-believer.
Right.
And will send me books about how Jesus ain't real.
Right.
Send me books about the Illuminati and stuff like that, because she knew that her deity is so strong that it facilitates her having immense love for me, despite me not believing what she believes. You know what I'm saying?
And then it's kind of, belief definitely is necessary, because without it, a person's fire extinguishes. Right. Many people walk around hopeless because they don't believe in anything. Right. Belief is a requirement for a man to stand up in this reality and to.
I think it's
to
hardwired
live
in our
illuminated.
biology, though, that we will create belief systems in the presence of unawareness. So humans have this overwhelming ability to use their gray matter in this frontal cortex to justify and create elaborate means to understand the circumstances surrounding them. And sometimes if they really brood on certain shit for the long time, for the long haul, what'll occur is they'll start tapping at truth. You know what I'm saying? So could you imagine
truth that don't require beliefs?
Right. Like when I speak to my brother Oba, and Oba always brings me back to West Africa and the stories. Our religion was an oral tradition of stories, and I'll tell you a story, and you retain the story, and in the story has rubrics and various things that unlock parts of your psychology. And over time, those stories, like mosquitoes buzzing in people's ears, maybe sounded one way to you as a child, but now as an adult, as 19 keys,
Right.
it has a whole different
because
connotation.
of my experience with the mosquitoes changes the mosquito symbolism and feeling that I have towards it.
Right.
So now when I think of mosquito, I don't think of it without feeling, right? At first, this mosquito becomes this character, right? Maybe a messenger, right? To carry a word or to be some usefulness, specifically in this storyline for a child. Now, I think of mosquitoes, I might think Bill Gates, right? Because the mosquito symbolism has all of these new connections based on your experience with it throughout time.
Yeah.
Right. And so I like the idea of the constant being the oratory tradition. Right. And now we found more means than one, but in word, you are giving somebody a mathematical code. Right. So like I talked about when I met you, you say legend. Right. Who doesn't want to be a legend? But how many times do you hear that throughout your life when somebody say legend? Even if I meet somebody and I be like, yo, I see that light in you, right? You one of the ones. You can go your whole life and never hear that. So when you hear that, it can unlock a story for you. That story allows you to create a new narrative in your own mind. Your imagination starts to unlock on what your story is going to be. And now you're activating a belief which starts to have impact on real reality, because now you're putting energy towards it. And that energy forces it to be real, because now you have it in your mind, and now you can start putting impact on reality to start changing things up until that belief becomes a hardened reality. So when we can impact people with belief, we impact reality at the same time.
And the first belief that I asked Oba, what's the earliest Odu and belief of the people? And the first thing was to build you a house.
A physical house?
A physical house. Put a roof on it. Things of that nature. And that shows you the power of the cortex. That beliefs, your survival, your ability to survive will start creating the infrastructure for your religious practices. And this is how we got to the real religions that has never gone nowhere. Our religions are based off of the things which sustain our ability to exist. So God is a grain when you go to Mali. When you go to when they speak of the potolo, and they say that the grain from the sun star Sirius is where the source of the grain which sustains the people. So the same activity of the grain, how the grain explodes, is very small, and then it turns into something great, and then it creates a whole field of abundance.
It's the philosophy of atoms.
Right. And that comes from the cortex and the observer. So ancient civilization, this is how we know that in order for you to make stuff like pyramids, the people had to have at least 50,000 years of information prior to that.
That brings me to a thought, because it's kind of the idea that people marvel at the structure and result of the age of the pyramids, but don't look at the process of all that came before, right? Until that age was able to come brought into existence. It's like a person looking at the age of the internet and technology of AI and being wondrous about it, but not looking at all of the different broad strokes that had to happen before we paint this picture that is present day.
Right.
So it's like the real true marvel is the process that accumulates until we get to this point.
Our people had observed that the planet was off its axis, and they created the pyramids to restore order, gravitational field order. So it must have been a war or something of that nature. But there are monuments far older than the pyramids, even here in the Americas.
Yeah.
Like Serpent Mound, you heard, is older than the pyramids. So
where's Serpent Mound?
In Louisiana.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have Serpent Mound, and then you have and it's propitiously aligned to the star system as well.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So what happens is the world suffers when our religions have been stolen away from us, and we've witnessed ever since my childhood, I've witnessed the religious world never not be at war. And they're continuously at war because they say people of color are cursed. And because I do believe in curses. If you believe in the magnetic field, you have to believe in curse.
What is a curse to you? What is a interesting thing to add to that context is the children no longer learn cursive in today's age.
One of the ancient ways to say the word curse is yara or yara.
Very harsh language.
Right. And you can hear ray, you hear light in it. You hear and then another one is
And what language was that?
Hebrew. Which is a wonderful language because it acts as a bridge to ancient psychology. You see? So there are nuances in the language that encapsulate the ways of thinking of the ancient people. So to spread a curse is to spread seeds of dissent. It was curses. A farmer will curse you. That's his religion. He knows how to spread seeds, and all the religions come from that. If you see the death card in tarot, you see the skith. The skith becomes an instrument of deity now because grain is the god. The only way to access grain is to kill God. You have to cut it. This is why I always tell people, it's very interesting that in the modern era, humans, in particular the African American, has adorned himself with the term deity and God on itself, but the ancient psychology and adoration of God, they would consume their gods. You heard? And this is one of the reasons why, if you see the cultural morphology prior to the more popular dynastic periods in Egypt, the Sultan used to be the head god in the pantheon, a pig-headed deity. When they changed their catalog of deification and changed that and put Osar there, Now they not only demonized the Sutin, they also demonized the consumption of pig.
Mm,
So if we're not worshiping the pig no more, we can no longer eat the pig.
mm.
So Sutin name is the root of the word shaitan. So now Islamically, morphologically, Muslims do not eat shaitan because they don't eat pork.
Mm.
You see? So humans are they're not problematic in the realm of trying to understand survival. They create some very like nuanced ways of attributing symbols to things that empowers them over the actual thing.
Which is interesting. I mean, but you know, symbols they have energetic signatures, right? It's like words do.
Very good
right?
term associated.
So if you have a negative word, you wouldn't want to consume that word.
Right.
Right? I wouldn't want to speak negative over the food because then that frequency gets trapped into the food and it can destroy the
I'm gonna give you
integrity of
another
that food
example of that.
basis.
An example of that is when years ago, I remember a brother told me he was going to have a debate with some religious figures, and he wanted me to go into the text and speak about this particular part of the Bible that speaks about leprosy. Now, do you remember when everybody remembers when they first came into knowledge of self, you spoke to the elder gods and they was always telling you that the pilgrims are descendants of leopards, right? From the disease of leprosy. That is one of the biggest fallacies ever, because when you go read the text in the Hebrew, you'll see that it's an extispicy right that they're speaking about. That the word gold is associated to something good. So when they say leprosy, they saying, oh, you can see the yellow hairs inside of the womb. They were talking about looking at the golden lining or the silver lining of the intestinal tract. So over time, they make you think that leprosy, oh, it's the disease that deals with lighter skinned people, whites and all that. And all it was a mistranslation. But our people never attributed disease to something like gold. We would use gold and ingest it. We would wear gold on our body. We would not say that a wound has gold in it. We wouldn't. We had over 1,000 words for just disease, oozing, pus, things like that in medical books from Sumer all the way to Egypt. We never would have to use the Bible and say gold was inside of a wound. You see? So we're dealing with so much mistranslation. Back to what you were saying in regards to energy signatures associated to terms, we're not going to attribute something that is malefic. You heard?
Right.
It's like when you were a child.
But that's what I was saying to that point.
Yeah.
To not consume something that does have a negative energy signature is an intelligent practice, whether a person is ignorant of the roots and the morphology, you know, that it end up becoming by the time it gets to them.
Like that brand of water, liquid death.
Yeah.
I'm like, hold up. I just read the book with the Japanese brother talking about the power of water.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know if I want
Right.
a liquid death right now.
Yeah, because it changes the structure of water.
It
literally.
does. It does.
It's like a sigil on the can itself.
It does. Brother Oba told me yesterday that water has no enemy. Water will wait you out. Water will corrode through iron and anything. Yeah. And a very interesting thing is if we had a family member that unfortunately drowned, it's not going to stop us from drinking water, bro. You know? So the utility is the utility in design is one of the most amazing attributes that the African has ever, you know, design denotes purpose, has ever introduced to the world. Not only just in the form of things that you can view with your sensory perception, but just the design of spirit in the form of how you process the hierarchy structure of where we are in the universe at large, you know? And we were the best ones to do it. We didn't place ourselves in hells where no one understands what's going on. It's a fiery hell that's stronger than this hell, it's stronger than this hell, stronger than that hell. No, we didn't do none of that. We had propitious places to put everything in the fullness of life.
Well, yeah, man had a way of understanding all things. And in that, man becomes his own magi, right? The ability to, you know, interpret reality specifically on to self and the collective, right? So if you're, even before, like, we go to names, right? When you have a time where, you know, everything matters, everything you do then is calculated and has to be mathematical, right? So therefore, if you have a son, you know, already born that is an emotional son, then you may want a logical one, right? If you have one that's an artist, then you may want to have one that's a warrior, right? Because you may be looking for balance. So then you may name one son, right, based on the tenets or, you know, the principles of that name for him to grow into that thing, like how a mafia may want a doctor in the family or a lawyer or a policeman or somebody, right? Because the family was the carrier for ruling over time, right? So I talk about time territory a lot, right? Because we were a time and space rulers. But the way we ruled time and space wasn't just with a conquering attitude, right? You had to be a madman. It was through the principles of being able to correctly, you know, balance out your reality that can carry things over time.
Those who conquer time actually are those who honor their ancestors.
Well, that's the planetary masters. Like you talked about it earlier. Being involved in planetary affairs is a conversation I've been having as a string in some of these. We've lost our master mind, right, in the thinking that it is our responsibility over planetary affairs. So if one is building a pyramid in connection to a star system for the balancing of a wobbled earth, then that is a collective thinking about planetary affairs. Man is only caught up with his personal affairs, right? And he's not good at managing those. So we've lost the idea of managing systems. We manage, that's the power class manage systems. We can barely manage ideas and the execution of those ideas. And then we can barely manage people, the labor for the execution of that ideas. And then we can barely manage mind, right? For us to be able to be involved in this entire world within itself. So the deepest disconnection that we have with our ancestors is the mastermind and the involvement of planetary affairs.
When you go back to, just to establish another point and dovetail on what we're speaking on, when you go look at
dovetail, I like that.
Yeah, it's better than piggyback.
Yeah, we say veggie bag. I like the dovetail even better. We getting fly with it.
No question. So the we see a trend, and the major trend of all ancient people, the only way that you can actually find these people's their behaviors and their religious systems is you have to go to their grave sites, you know? And the grave sites in the majority of the places where they say that religion issues forth from, they have these terms associated to these areas of these cities, and these cities were called tells. So we have Tel Amara, Tel Aviv, places all throughout that region. And if you hear the word tell in the beginning of it, it's indicative of a practice of Sumerian people and people of Ubayyad. They call them Ubayyads. They pre-Sumerian, right? And these people are West African. And I say that these people are West African because they participate in West African belief systems, and they were very rooted in, which is still today, our people are very superstitious. There's always a meaning behind everything, brother. We never explain away nothing. Everything has a meaning, so to speak. So when you find these cities, and these are cities, all of these cities are built on top of ancestors, dead people, purposely. so as to create a connection with your ancestors. We live with them, right? So now, what happened when those religious practices ceased to exist? And instead of burying or creating cities on top of burial grounds, they started creating temples. So we have that in the form of the Dome of the Rock, the Wailing Wall. That's on the side of Herod's built that wall to maintain the cemetery behind it, which has the ancestors of the ancient period around it. The Dome of the Rock is built on top of ancestral burial grounds. But why is there such strife? The energy signatures of the ancestors that have not been honored, that are not even acknowledged anymore, that have been cut off from the people. They tell the people, let me catch you. If I ever catch you doing something reminiscent of your ancient religion, you're going to die. You heard? So now you got to centralize your focus of belief onto this nebulous deity external to yourself that you will never see, right? And then charge it all to the game, to him. And then what happens is the world is in muck. The world is in turmoil, because the very connection back to the very thing that keeps the world peaceful, the magnetic field, the very thing that keeps the natural order of our existence intact, is the understanding of our ancestors in their existence, that it never dies, that they are present among us. Like you right now, I'm sitting here with you. Had you the ability to go back 10 people before you who all lived to be at least 95, 100 years old, we going back only 1,000 years. 10 people from you is 1,000 years, bro. 20 yous, 19 of you. It's 1,900 years ago, brother. Yeah. Is that a long time ago? Is that a lot of people? No. You see? So you are direct descendant. You might be very well one of the ancestors back in the day that said, you know what, in any period, maybe let's go post-slavery, you heard? Or pre-slavery, like this, you know what? This ain't never gonna happen to me again. You heard? Never. Watch. And then they did things that live presently inside your infrastructure, your DNA. So I'm like,
that's the time conquest.
It is. And then to acknowledge the time conquest is what enamors you with the conquest.
Because that's the evolution. Most of our one of our things is our disconnection. Right? Because once you disconnected, whatever happened previous to you does not matter unless that's activated again in another form. Right? Meaning that, 19,000 years from now, or 1,900 years from now, the next 19 keys, right? If they don't have connection to the ideas that's in their DNA, right? The passions, the intellect, the vision that's in their DNA, because they're